Today we are going to start a new chapter, that is respiration in plants. So if you basically talk about the respiration that includes the production of energy, right? Now how that energy is being produced? The energy is being produced by the oxidation of food, right? Any living organisms, they are taking the oxygen, right? And also they are taking the food. When food is oxidized, the energy will be released, and we require energy to do various metabolic function, right? And the energy is always released in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate, right? So we are going to start from here. Firstly, what are the various topics that we are going to study in this respiration in plants? So first we will study, do plants breathe? Right, as we know that they do not have any kinds of lungs, right? So there is no particular respiratory organs in the plants. Then how do plants breathe? If they breathe, then how they, right? Second, glycolysis, that means how the glucose is break down to release energy. Then we will study about the fermentation, aerobic respiration, the respiration that takes place in the presence of oxygen. Then we will study about the respiratory balance sheet and amphibolic pathway, and last one we are going to study about the respiratory quotient, right? So we are here going to start respiration. So what is respiration? It is a biochemical process. Why it is biochemical? Because that takes place in the living organism, right? Anything that takes place or that involves the living organism, we call it as a bio. And chemicals, because it includes chemicals like food in the form of glucose, ATPs, energy molecules are there. So it is a chemical process that takes place in the living organism. That is why we are calling it as a biochemical process. In this, the oxygen and the glucose, right? The oxygen and glucose, they are combining to release the carbon dioxide. Second product will be the water, and third one will be the ATP, that is our energy molecules, right? So when the glucose is oxidized, right, glucose, that is a food form, and glucose is always oxidized in the presence of oxygen, right? And what will be the products will be forming? That is CO2, carbon dioxide, water, H2O, and ATP, that is the energy currency. So in the all living organism, the life processes are going on. Life processes includes your digestion, nutrition, because we know that living organism, they require food also, they require oxygen also, right? So this is the life processes. And the energy required, whatever the energy is required, that will be fulfilled by the oxidation of the macromolecules, right? The macromolecules, that is the glucose, that will be oxidized to release the energy, right? In case of green plants and cyanobacteria, the photosynthesis will be taking place. And in case of animals, they are heterotrophs, right? They cannot prepare their own food, so they are directly from the plants and indirectly carnivores, right? They are getting their food from the plants. Saprophytes, which are obtaining their food from the dead and decaying matter. So these are the various types of the nutritions, how the plants, animals, and the various saprophytes, they are obtaining their food. And from the food only, right, the oxygen will be taking inside the living organism, and only then the energy will be produced. So first requirement, that is the food, and the second requirement is the oxygen. Only then we are able to produce the energy, and respiration is all about to get the energy. So in the green plants, photosynthesis, that is occurring only inside the cells. We know that photosynthesis takes place inside the chloroplast, that is the green colored plastids, right? It does not occur in the non-green parts, right? Photosynthesis is always taking place in the where the chlorophyll is present, right? This is the outline of the photosynthesis and the respiration. So what is basically happening? It occurs in the chloroplast, right? As I told you, the photosynthesis, what is the location, where does actually it takes place? It takes place in the leaves, and in the leaves also they are just occurring in the chloroplast. And then what happening? The food is produced, right? In the photosynthesis, what is the last product? We are getting the food, not we, the plants, right? Plants are getting the food. Now this food, it will be breaking down, right? Food, glucose molecules are there, C6 molecules are there. So these C6 molecules, that will be breaking down and is going to produce a And glucose formula is C6H12O6, right? Just wait. So here you can see what is the formula of the glucose. C6H12O6. When oxygen molecules are there, then the glucose molecule is oxidized and is going to produce the carbon dioxide, water and energy, and this energy is always in the form of this ATP, right? So this is basically the catabolic process. The catabolic process is the destructive process in which the molecule is breaking down, right? This molecule is breaking down to produce the carbon dioxide, water and energy. If you remember about the photosynthesis, that is a anabolic process, that is a constructive process, right? If we are going to just make arrow this side, right, what is the reaction? So here you can see that when carbon dioxide, water, these are going to fuse together, that is forming a molecule, that is glucose, that is nothing but the photosynthesis. So you can say that the respiration and the photosynthesis, these are opposite to each other. Photosynthesis is the constructive process, that is the anabolic process, right, in which the carbon dioxide and water, they are forming a compound, right? But in case of respiration, this molecule, the food molecule or the glucose molecule, is breaking down. So respiration is a catabolic process, right? It is a destructive one in which the molecule is being just breaking down into the 2 or 3 products. One is the carbon dioxide, water and energy. Energy is always in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate, right? So firstly, we will see about the glycolysis. That is, glycolysis is a process in which glucose is breaking down, right? Glyco means glucose, lysis means breakdown. So how glucose is breaking down to form the energy, right? So here, firstly, it is coming from the Greek word, that is glycose means sugar and lysis means splitting, right? It is also known as EMP pathway, right? The glycolysis is also known as EMP pathway because it was discovered by Amden, Meyerhoff and Parnas, right? After the name of these 3 scientists, it is also known as EMP pathway. In anaerobic organism, right? Anaerobic organisms are those, right, which are carrying out the respiration in absence of oxygen also, right? It is the only process in the respiration. And where does this glycolysis occur? This occur in the cytoplasm, which is present in all the living organism, right? The glycolysis is the only method by which the glucose is breaking down, and that takes place in the cytoplasm. So here we are going to see the whole process. Firstly, the glucose is there, right? We know that glucose is a 6 carbon molecule. So firstly, the glucose will be converted into the glucose 6 phosphate, right? What is happening here? You can see there is a glucose molecule which is in the form of 6 carbon, right? 6 carbons are there, right? So you can make here 6 carbons, the 4, the 5th one, right, and here the 6th one carbon, right? So what is happening here? You can see glucose 6 phosphate means at the 6th number carbon, if we are going to just make 1 2 3 4 5 6, so at the 6th position the phosphate molecule is being attached, so that is a glucose 6 phosphate. And how does this phosphate is coming? This phosphate is coming from the ATP, the ATP adeno triphosphate. Now it has been converted into the ADP, adenosine diphosphate. So triphosphate has been converted into diphosphate, which is releasing one phosphate molecule which is attached to the glucose molecule, right? And it becomes the glucose 6 phosphate, and then this structure is changed to the fructose 6 phosphate, right? That process is known as isomerization, right? After this, fructose 1,6 biphosphate, right? Bisphosphate means here only one phosphate molecule was there. Here at one position is also phosphate, and at the 6th position is also a phosphate molecule. So now there are 2 phosphate molecules. Again the ATP will be breaking down into ATP to release the phosphate molecule. Now this is a 6 carbon molecule. In the next, we are getting the 2 products. If we are just breaking the 6 carbon molecule into the 2 molecules, that will be a 3 carbon compound. So you can see here it will be a 3 carbon compound which are interconvertible, right? The first one compound is a glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, and the second one is a DHAP, that is dihydroxyacetone phosphate. It is also known as H A over here. So the molecule that will be formed is DHAP. These two molecules are interconvertible, right? This glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate and DHAP, this can formed into this, and when the DHAP, it will be converted into the glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, which is a 3 carbon molecule, right? Now this 3 carbon molecule, it will be breaking down into 1,3 bisphosphoglyceric acid, right? 1,3 bisphosphoglyceric acid. Glyceric acid is there in the glyceric acid at the 1 position, and the 3 position the phosphate molecules are there, right? So it is a 3 carbon molecule, and the 2 molecules will be formed, right? One from this and one from this, so 2 molecules will be forming. In the next one, this will be reduced to form this phosphoglyceric acid, right? Now the phosphate molecules have gone, and that will result in the production of a molecule that is known as 3-phosphoglyceric acid. Again the 2 molecules will be formed, and in this step now we are getting our first energy molecule, that is now ADP has been converted into ATP, right? So we get our first energy molecule ATP. Here again 3-phosphoglyceric acid, now it has been converted into 2-phosphoglyceric acid, right? And in the next process, in the next step, it will be converted into phosphoenol pyruvate, that is also termed as PEP, right? PEP, that is also known as phosphoenol pyruvate. 2 molecules will be forming, and this PEP will be converted into pyruvic acid, which is the last step in the process of glycolysis, right? Again ADP will be converted into ATP. So this first half reaction is the energy consuming reaction, right? In the 2 steps you have seen, the ATP has been converted into ADP, again ATP has been converted into ADP. So first half reaction is known as the energy consuming reaction, and the next half is known as the energy producing reaction, and we got the final product, that is the pyruvic acid. Now this pyruvic acid will enter into the Krebs cycle, right? And that Krebs cycle will be taking place inside the mitochondria, right? We are having the 2 phases, one is the glycolysis and another one is the Krebs cycle. In the glycolysis the energy is produced, and the last product we got is the pyruvic acid. Now this pyruvic acid is going to enter into the Krebs cycle, right? So this is just the balance sheet of this. So you can see here fermentation, how the fermentation taking place. It can take place through the 3 steps: lactic acid fermentation, in which the lactic acid will be produced at the as the end product; alcoholic fermentation, right, in which the alcohol is produced. Alcohol is ethanol and carbon dioxide, right? In the fermentation beverages also, right? If we are going to form the breads also, wine industries are there, right? So that types of fermentation is taking place, alcoholic fermentation. The last one is the aerobic respiration, that takes place in all the living organisms. Lactic acid fermentation basically takes place in the muscle cells when there is a lack of the oxygen, right? Under when just suppose if a person is taking a heavy exercise, so what happens in that condition? We are just suffering from shortage of oxygen, right? We are not getting that much oxygen which is needed to oxidize the food. So the end products, that is the ATP molecules, right, energy molecules, that is not going to form. Instead the lactic acid is going to produce, which are causing the muscle cramps, and we will feel tired, right? Muscle cramps will be formed, right? And these muscle cramps will result in the fatigue, right? We will feel tiredness in our body. Alcoholic fermentation, as I told you, that is taking place when the ethanol will be formed, right? The pyruvic acid is there, and this pyruvic acid will be just used to form the ethanol, right? Ethanol and carbon dioxide will also be produced, that is used in the fermented beverages, like producing the whiskey, beer, wine, etc. Aerobic respiration, that is going to take place inside the mitochondria, right? The pyruvic acid is going to enter into the Krebs cycle and is going to form the energy molecules, right? We are going to see here, see, pyruvic acid under the aerobic respiration, when the oxygen is there, the pyruvic acid which is formed in the glycolysis, that is going to enter into the mitochondria, right? Here the complete oxidation will be complete oxidation of pyruvate will be taking place, in which living three molecules of carbon dioxide. ठीक है, we were here in the aerobic respiration. The pyruvic acid, pyruvate firstly will convert it into the acetyl coenzyme A. Pyruvate was a 3 carbon compound which has been converted into the acetyl coenzyme, that is a 2 carbon compound, right? So firstly the compound that will be forming is the citric acid, right? Oxaloacetic acid is there, which is a 4 carbon molecule, and when this oxaloacetic acid and 2 carbon molecules, right, 4 plus 2, that will be forming a single compound is known as citric acid, that is 6 carbon molecule. And that is the only reason that Krebs cycle is also known as citric acid cycle, because the first product, right, the citric acid is the first product that we are getting as a result of this. We are calling it as a citric acid cycle also, right? When this citric acid, it will be first process in the decarboxylation will be there. Decarboxylation means removal of carbon dioxide. Here one carbon dioxide is removed, right? One carbon is removed, so that will be resulting in the formation of a 5 carbon molecule, right? That 5 carbon molecule is a alpha ketoglutarate acid, right? We got the 5 carbon molecule. Again, in the another step also, whenever the carbon dioxide, right, this is released out, there will be a reduction, right? Reduction that results in the formation of this NADH molecule, that will again is going to form the ATP molecule only, right? This is also the energy currency. So this 5 carbon molecule is again reduction will be taking place. Carbon dioxide decarboxylation is there, and whenever the decarboxylation means removal of carbon dioxide is there, the reduction will takes place. NADH has been reduced to NADH, right? And ADP, that is adenosine diphosphate, is again converted into ATP, right? So we are getting the ATP also, we are getting the NADH molecule also. And this 5 carbon molecule now again has been converted into 4 carbon molecule, right? Because one carbon has been removed, so that will result in the formation of 4 carbon molecule, which is a succinic acid. This succinic acid will be firstly converted into malic acid, that is again a 4 carbon molecule, but here again FADH molecule has been converted into a FADH2 molecule, right? And then in the last process, in the last step, this malic acid has been converted into the oxaloacetic acid, along with the reduction of NADH molecule into the NADH plus H molecule, and we get the oxaloacetic acid. And this oxaloacetic acid again will be forming a reaction with this acetyl coenzyme and is going to produce citric acid again, and the whole reaction is going to takes place, right? Here one NADH molecule is there, right? That is almost equal to the 6 ATP molecules, right? This NADH molecule, NADH2 molecule, is equivalent to the 6 ATP, right? So that is also the energy currency. You can see here that is equal to 6 ATP. You can also note it down, right? So in the glycolysis, we got the pyruvic acid. That pyruvic acid has undergone the 3 types of you can say respiration. One has entered into the lactic acid if there is a short of oxygen. One can this pyruvic acid can also enter into the alcoholic fermentation. And in the third step, we have studied about the Krebs cycle, right? So this is all about the Krebs cycle, that is also known as citric acid cycle, and that includes the involvement of the carbon dioxide remove is there. Then alpha glutaric acid is formed. From the alpha ketoglutarate acid, succinic acid is formed. From the succinic acid, malic acid is formed, and then from the malic acid, the last product that is known as oxaloacetic acid is formed, right? So here that is a complete balanced reaction. The pyruvic acid was there, 4 NADH molecule were used, FADH, 2 water molecules, ADP, and 1 inorganic phosphate. That is occurring inside the mitochondrial matrix, and as a result we are getting this, right? That is 3 carbon molecules are being removed, right? NADH molecule, 4 hydrogen, FADH2, and then ATP molecules, right? This is a complete balanced equation. Then we are having a electron transport system. Electron transport system is nothing but is formed of a types of complexes, right? That is the link between the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle, right? It is a basically a link between the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle that includes the four kinds of complexes. One complex known as the oxidative phosphorylation. In the oxidative phosphorylation, what happens, that includes basically five types of complexes: complex 1, complex 2, complex 3, and complex 4 and complex 5, right? The complex 1, it includes the NADH dehydrogenase, right? NADH dehydrogenase, right? These are the complexes that includes a number of enzymes, right? Whenever there is a suffix that is ase, that means it is an enzyme. So in the second complex, succinate dehydrogenase is there, then cytochromes B, C, 1 is there, then cytochrome A3 is there, and then ATP synthesis. This is nothing but is the kind of the production in which the NADPH or the ATP molecules that is forming a kind of a linkage between the glycolysis and the citric acid cycle, or also known as Krebs cycle, right? Next, we are going to study about the ATP synthesis. Okay, how does this ATP synthesis is working? So, if we are knowing about the structure of the mitochondria, right, there were F0 and F1 molecules were there, right? So that is producing a kind of a gradient, right? This is the outer side and this is the inner membrane part, right? We know that the mitochondria is having a two membranes, right? So one is the outer and one is the inner. So this is the inner mitochondrial membrane, right? So when the outside, the 2H positive molecule, right, two hydrogen ions are there, that is forming inside, right? They are just coming inside. Then what is happening? This ADP molecule, right, that is adenosine diphosphate, inorganic phosphate, right? It is a two molecules of phosphate and one molecule of phosphate is here. When they are combining together, that is releasing the ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. And this is a complete structure of the ATP synthesis, right? ATP synthesis is nothing but the enzyme that is present in the mitochondrial matrix that involves in the production of ATP. And ATP is formed from the ADP molecules plus inorganic phosphate molecule in the presence of these two molecules of 2H positive, which are bringing inside with the help of electron transport system, right? Electron transport system was there, which is forming a connecting link between the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. And this is how the ATP is formed, which is the final energy currency that a plant require to carry out its various metabolic functions, right? So here is the complete respiratory balanced sheet, means how many ATPs and how many molecules of these are produced. So one glucose, right, is there, that is producing a net gain of 36 ATP molecules, right, during the aerobic respiration of one molecule of glucose, right? If we are talking about a one molecule of glucose, that is C6H12O6, right, that is forming a complete 36 ATP molecules. Fermentation and aerobic respiration we have discussed, right? So this is an amphibolic pathway. Amphibolic pathway in which we are just doing how these all are interlinked together, right? So we are just making a outline of this one. This is also given in your NCERT also. Just see the food molecule, that is fats are there, carbohydrates are there, and proteins are there, right? We know that the food molecules, right, our food contains the fats also, carbohydrates also, proteins also, right? The proteins are being digested into the amino acid with the help of proteases. Protease is the enzyme that is acting on the proteins, and when the proteins are breaking down, that is forming amino acids, right? And from the amino acids, the pyruvic acid is formed, right? So one thing is done, proteins. Coming to the fats, when fats are being decomposed, the end products are the fatty acids and glycerol, and from the fatty acids and glycerol, again we are getting the acetyl coenzyme, right? We now getting it, pyruvic acid, acetyl coenzyme, that is entering into the Krebs cycle, right? And now when we are talking about the carbohydrates, right, this is nothing but the glycolysis. Glucose 6 phosphate is there, fructose 1,6 phosphate, and then skipping some steps are there which are skipped. Then last you can just see it is a pyruvic acid. That pyruvic acid has entered into the Krebs cycle, that is releasing the carbon dioxide also, that is releasing the water also, that is also releasing the ATP molecule also to produce the energy. So this is an amphibolic pathway means it is the interconnection of all the things, and that results in the production of water, carbon dioxide, and finally the ATP molecule, right? The last topic of this chapter is the respiratory quotient. Respiratory quotient is the volume of the carbon dioxide evolved as per the volume of the carbon dioxide evolved to the volume of the oxygen consumed in the respiration is known as respiratory quotient. That is also known as a respiratory ratio. So here is a formula: volume of the carbon dioxide evolved as per the volume of the oxygen consumed. जितने भी volume carbon dioxide की release हुई है as compared to the जितनी volume of oxygen consume हुई थी, right? That is known as the respiratory quotient. Now it depends upon the respiratory substance, what kind of respiratory substrates were there, right? In case of carbohydrates, if we are taking the respiratory substrates is a carbohydrate, in that case it is completely oxidized and respiratory quotient is always equal to 1, right? Because the carbon dioxide and the oxygen, it is in the form of equal amount, right? So carbon dioxide divided by oxygen, when they are in equal amount, say it is a 10, right? Carbon dioxide was 10 and the oxygen, it was also a 10. So the respiratory quotient, it is just equal to 1 in case of carbohydrates. In case of fats, this respiratory quotient is less than 1, right? Because the carbon dioxide produced is less as compared to the oxygen, so it is always less than 1. In case of proteins, the respiratory quotient is 0.9, right? Thank you so much.